Welcome back to English Through Wisdom. I hope you learned something valuable from our last lesson. It is wonderful to have you here again today.
I was the most respected man in the marketplace, until a stranger asked me one simple question, and by sunset I could not remember who I thought I was. Everyone around me was laughing. They said an old barefoot man in a plain robe could not possibly embarrass someone like me. They were wrong. Years later, I finally understood the wisdom hidden behind that single afternoon, and I have never looked at my own certainty the same way again. Welcome to English Through Wisdom. Here we learn English through powerful stories, timeless lessons, and wisdom from cultures around the world. Today we travel to ancient Athens for a story about pride, certainty, and the moment everything changed for one confident man. Damon walked through the Athenian marketplace the way a king walks through his own palace. Not rushed, not loud, simply certain in a way that made other men step aside without being asked. He was 38 years old, and he had built everything with his own hands. Ships that carried olive oil to Corinth, warehouses full of grain, a house with a courtyard so wide that his neighbors joked he could host the entire street for dinner. But it was not the wealth that made people watch him. It was the way he spoke. Damon always had an answer. Ask him about trade routes, about the will of the gods, about how a man should raise his sons, and he would answer without pausing, without doubt, without a single crack in his voice. You should ask Damon, people would say. Damon will know. He liked the sound of that sentence more than he liked almost anything else in his life. There was a quiet pleasure Damon felt when a young craftsman asked him for advice, or when a servant lowered his eyes as Damon passed. He told himself it was respect. In the private corner of his mind he did not often visit, it was something closer to superiority, and it tasted sweet enough that he never questioned where it came from. He had heard of Socrates before, the way most Athenians had. An odd man. No money. No fine clothes. He wandered the agora barefoot, stopping strangers with questions instead of answers. Some called him wise. Damon privately thought him foolish. What kind of man builds a reputation by admitting he knows nothing? He humiliated Nicias last week, a merchant told Damon one morning, grinning as if sharing gossip about a scandal. Just questions, that's all. But by the end, Nicias could not say what justice even means, and he has argued cases in court for 20 years. Damon laughed, a short, dry sound. Nicias always talked more than he thought. They say no one has beaten him yet. Something small shifted in Damon's chest, something he would not have called fear if you had asked him. He told himself it was simply curiosity, a itch, nothing more. Then perhaps, Damon said, setting down his cup, it is time someone did. Word spread quickly, the way it always did in a city that loved a spectacle. By the following afternoon, a small crowd had gathered near the fountain in the agora, drawn by whispers that the wealthy merchant Damon intended to face Socrates and put an end to his little game. Socrates arrived without ceremony. An older man, plain robe, sandals worn thin at the heel, eyes that moved slowly and settled on people the way a craftsman studies wood before cutting it. He greeted Damon with a small nod, nothing more. They tell me you know a great many things, Socrates said, his voice calm, almost gentle. I have built a life from knowing things, Damon answered, aware of the crowd, aware of his own posture straightening. Then perhaps you can help me with something small, Socrates said. I only wish to understand one idea properly. You believe certain things are good and certain things are bad, correct? Of course. How do you know that what you believe is true? Damon smiled. An easy question, he thought. Because it agrees with what wise men have always taught, and with what experience has shown me. Which wise men? My father, the elders of this city, the poets. And how did your father know it was true? Damon opened his mouth, then paused just slightly. He learned it from his own father and from his own experience. So the belief was passed to you the way a coin is passed from hand to hand, Socrates said. Has anyone, at any point along that chain, actually examined whether the coin is real gold, or only looks like gold? A few people in the crowd shifted their weight. Someone coughed. It has held its value for generations, Damon said, an edge entering his voice now. That is proof enough. Is it? A false belief can also be repeated for generations. Repetition proves only that people agree, not that they are right. Tell me, Damon, what is justice? Giving each person what they are owed. And if a madman lends you his sword and later asks for it back so he can harm an innocent person, are you obligated to return it since it is owed to him? Damon hesitated. The silence stretched half a second too long, and he felt it. The way you feel a stone in your sandal before you look down to find it. No, he said slowly, not in that case. Then giving each person what they are owed is not always justice. Your definition breaks the moment it meets a difficult example. So what is justice truly? Damon's mind reached for something, anything, and found only the echo of his own earlier confidence, now looking thin and borrowed. I would need to think on that further, he admitted, and the words felt strange leaving his mouth, like a language he had never spoken before. The crowd had gone quiet in a way Damon had never experienced. Not the quiet of admiration. A different quiet. The quiet of people watching something come apart slowly, without violence, without insult, simply through questions asked one after another. Socrates did not smile in triumph. If anything, his face looked almost sad. You are not stupid, Damon. You are simply unexamined. There is a difference, and it is not a small one. The conversation ended there. No one declared a winner. There was no applause, no laughter, only the sound of sandals on stone as the crowd slowly drifted away. Many of them unusually silent, several of them glancing back at Damon with an expression he could not quite name. Pity, perhaps, or recognition. Damon walked home alone that evening for the first time in years. Though his house was usually full of guests eager to hear his opinions, he could not sleep. He lay awake replaying each question, searching for the clever answer he must have simply missed in the moment, the one that would restore the shape of who he believed himself to be. He did not find it. Instead, he found more questions underneath the ones Socrates had asked. Questions about his marriage, his business decisions, the way he had once dismissed his own son's doubts as weakness. How many of his certainties, he wondered, were simply coins passed down without ever being tested? By morning, something in him had quietly rearranged itself, without his permission and without ceremony. He did not feel humiliated exactly. He felt strangely lighter, the way a man feels after setting down a heavy basket he had carried so long he forgot it was a weight at all. 3 days later, Damon returned to the agora. He wore plain clothes, no fine cloak, no servants trailing behind him to announce his arrival. He found Socrates sitting near the same fountain, speaking quietly with 2 young men about the nature of courage. Socrates looked up and said nothing at first, only waited. I have thought about what you asked me, Damon said. I still do not have an answer for what justice is. Good, Socrates said. That is the most honest sentence I have heard from you. Damon almost laughed, an unfamiliar, unguarded sound. Will you teach me? Not what to think, how to think. Socrates studied him for a long moment. The day you discovered your own ignorance, he said, was the day your education truly began. Most men never reach that day. They die still certain, still convinced the coin in their hand is gold. Damon sat down on the stone beside him, and for the first time in his adult life, he asked a question instead of offering an answer, and found he did not mind the discomfort of not knowing. In the months that followed, people in the marketplace noticed a change in Damon that they struggled to describe. He still ran his warehouses. He still negotiated fair prices. But he listened before he spoke now, and when he did speak, It was often to ask, rather than to declare. Strangely, this made people trust him more, not less. His old friends missed the man who always had an answer. His old friends missed the man who always had an answer. His new friends, the craftsmen and the servants who had once lowered their eyes as he passed, found themselves seeking him out, not for his certainty, but for his questions. Damon never became famous the way Socrates did. History does not record his name in the old texts. But those who knew him in Athens would tell their children about the wealthy merchant who lost an argument he never started, and somehow gained more than he ever had while he was winning every conversation before it. The wisdom hidden in this story comes from Socrates himself, and it survives today in a phrase often translated as, "I know that I know nothing," from the ancient Greek, hen oida, hoti odin oida. Some scholars debate the exact wording Socrates used, since we know his ideas mainly through his student Plato's writings, but the core idea has survived for over 2,000 years without losing its power. The phrase does not mean a person should stop learning or stop forming beliefs. It means something more precise, and honestly more uncomfortable. It means recognizing the difference between believing something because you inherited it and believing something because you actually tested it against reality. In the story, Damon's confidence was never really about facts. It was about identity. He needed to be the man who always had an answer, because the alternative felt like weakness. This is a very human pattern, not just an ancient Greek one. We often defend our opinions not because we have carefully examined them, but because admitting uncertainty feels like losing status or losing control. That is exactly why this proverb survived for so many centuries, across so many cultures that developed similar ideas independently. It names something true about how the human mind protects itself. Pride does not usually announce itself loudly. It hides inside certainty, inside the comfort of never having to say, "I do not know." The story connects to this wisdom in its ending as well. Damon's transformation was not marked by a dramatic victory or a clever comeback. It was marked by a quiet admission, followed by curiosity. That, according to this old idea, is where real wisdom begins, not in having every answer, but in becoming comfortable enough with yourself to admit when you do not. Think for a moment about the last time you defended an opinion strongly. Was it because you had truly examined the evidence? Or because changing your mind would have felt uncomfortable, even a little humiliating? Have you ever judged someone too quickly, the way the crowd in the marketplace judged Socrates as a strange old man wasting people's time, before they ever really listened to what he was doing? Have you ever met your own version of that one question, a moment, a conversation, a piece of criticism, that quietly showed you a belief you had never actually tested? What would you do if you were standing in Damon's place, in front of a crowd, realizing in real time that an answer you always trusted did not actually hold up? There is no need to answer these out loud right now, but if one of them stayed with you for even a second longer than the others, that is probably worth paying attention to. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Sometimes the most honest conversations start with a single uncomfortable question, just like they did for Damon. Confidence, meaning a strong belief in your own abilities or correctness. Example, her confidence made everyone trust her opinion immediately. Reputation, meaning the general opinion people have about someone. Example, he built his reputation through years of honest work. Assumption, meaning something believed to be true without proof. Example, I made an assumption about him before I actually knew him. Certainty, meaning the state of being completely sure about something. Example, she spoke with such certainty that no one dared to disagree. Humiliation, meaning a strong feeling of embarrassment or shame. Example, he feared humiliation more than he feared failure. Curiosity, meaning a strong desire to know or learn something. Example, curiosity pushed her to ask one more question. Transformation, meaning a complete change in form or character. Example, his transformation surprised everyone who knew him before. Unexamined, meaning not carefully considered or tested. Example, he realized many of his beliefs were completely unexamined. Superiority, meaning the feeling of being better than others. Example, a quiet sense of superiority guided most of his decisions. Awakening, meaning the moment someone suddenly understands something important. Example, that single question became a personal awakening for him. Humility, meaning a modest view of your own importance. Example, true humility often follows a painful moment of honesty. Wisdom, meaning deep understanding gained through experience and reflection. Example, wisdom is often quieter than confidence, but it lasts longer. Repeat this paragraph aloud, slowly at first, then at natural speed. I was the most respected man in the marketplace, until a stranger asked me one simple question, and by sunset I could not remember who I thought I was. He was not stupid, Socrates told him. He was simply unexamined, and there is a difference, and it is not a small one. Damon sat down on the stone beside him, and for the first time in his adult life, he asked a question instead of offering an answer, and found he did not mind the discomfort of not knowing. Today we walked through ancient Athens with Damon, a man who mistook confidence for wisdom, and discovered through one quiet conversation that true understanding begins with humility, not certainty. We also practiced 12 useful English words and gave your speaking a little extra strength through shadowing. Keep learning English, keep discovering stories, and keep collecting wisdom from around the world.
If you enjoyed learning English through this ancient saying, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need this wisdom today. Until next time, keep learning English and keep collecting wisdom from around the world.